Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Financially Free Teacher webinar. It's Janelle Rock, and I'm the CEO of Generation Wealth, and I'm excited about what we are going to learn together on this webinar. So if you're just joining, I'd like for you to drop your name, role, and school city in the chat. And if you could use an emoji to represent your current relationship with money, which emoji would you use and why? So go ahead and drop your name, role, city in the chat, and tell me a little bit about the emoji that you choose to represent your relationship with money. All right, Brianna, welcome. All right, let's see those emojis. Oh, look at that emoji. It's kind of like, maybe a little sad, a little exhausted. Tell us a little bit about why you chose that emoji. You can drop a sentence or two in the chat. All right. I love that happy face because I get excited when I have some. I know that's right. My little cousin came over today, um, and before she left, one of my family members gave her $5, and then I gave her another five, and she's like, "I'm rich." If only $10 is all it took, right? But we also know the potential every dollar has to grow. Dealing with unexpected costs. Yes. Oh my goodness. The life of an adult. We don't know how good we have it when we're kids, when we have all of these unexpected expenses. I totally understand. Um, so let's jump into it and talk a little bit about, how do we get some more of the money in our lives that make us happy when we have it in our hands? And how do we plan for the unexpected? I want to tell you a little bit about me before we get into the content for today. So, back in 2007, I remember I had graduated from college with $28,000 in student loan debt and over $3,000 in credit card debt. I had studied abroad. My family didn't really have a lot of money. I went to school on a full scholarship. Got the opportunity to study in Italy for a year. And that's about it. Like, I had to work while I was there for anything extra that I wanted. And so I did have a credit card and I ended up maxing that out. And then I had student loans. So my scholarship was for 3 full years and I had to pay for 1 year. So we paid with loans. So, that was pretty much my story. But if we backtrack to high school, when I was in high school, I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it really challenged my understanding about how people make a living. And when I read that, I was like, man, I would really like to be like Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad. Now, I didn't have a Rich Dad mentor in my life, but I knew that it was something that I desired. So in 2006, I started investing in real estate. I was 25 years old. I had been teaching for about 2.5 years. I was teaching first grade at my old elementary school in the classroom where I was a first grader many years ago. And even more interesting and ironic is that my first grade teacher, she was actually still teaching there. And she had an office in the back of my classroom. So I did have very good mentors when I was a teacher. All of my old teachers, almost all of them, were still at that school. So I received a lot of feedback, mentorship as a teacher. And I also started investing in real estate, and I didn't have many mentors. So what's interesting was when I got presented with this opportunity, it was a family member of mine who introduced this idea. He says, "Hey," he was actually my cousin's husband. He says, "Have this opportunity. One of my childhood friends. He's been doing, real estate investing, and he's been doing really well. We should go into business with him." So, first rule, anybody ever tells you about any business or anything and it involves another person, you have to treat a business partner the same way you treat a spouse. You've got to make sure you do your due diligence and learn everything about them, because when things go south, you got to know what you're dealing with. I did not do that. I trusted my family member, and we started buying these properties, right? So by 2006, I had already owned four investment properties, and they were all valued at over $300,000 each. Within 2 years, I lost all four of them and was in over $1 million in debt. And I remember the friend, we'll call him Marlon, he was nowhere to be found. He disappeared from the scene. I had four properties. My cousin's husband, he had four properties. So together we had eight. And it was a very difficult time. Imagine I'm a teacher earning $40,000 a year. I've got over $1 million in debt. Then I, lose the properties. The banks are calling me. I have no idea how I'm gonna do this. And I remember this was a very difficult time for me because I had also just recently lost my grandmother in 2008. So I remember my mom and I going on a retreat, and one of the speakers at the retreat was a woman who was like a self-made millionaire. And she had herself also, she was in a lot of debt when she was much younger and was able to work her way out of that. So I went and I spoke to her. I told her what I was going through. She says, "Listen," she says, "don't file for bankruptcy. The rest of the country is going through the same thing, and these banks are going to have to answer, these lenders are going to have to answer for why they were giving loans to people who did not have the income to really back this up." So I took her advice. My cousin's husband, he filed for bankruptcy. I didn't. I focused on using the money that I was making as a teacher to pay off my student loan debt and pay off my credit card debt. I didn't pick up the phone when the creditors were calling because I had nothing to tell them. I just focused on what I could. After a while, the call stopped. I finished paying off my student loans and credit card debt. I built up enough courage to check my credit report. And this was in 2012, right? So 4 years later, I built up enough courage. I'm like, let me see if my credit score maybe it's out of the 400. It was real bad. It was really bad. To my surprise, I checked the credit report and my credit score was 712. And all of those properties, they just like fell off of my credit report. To this day, I don't know when it happened within that 4 years, but what I do know is that when we, think about back in 2008, these banks had these loans that were, I mean, all over the country. And the government step in so that we didn't go into a full-on depression. So as these banks were forgiven for these loans that they gave to individuals who did not have the income to really pay that, they also had to not hold people accountable, or not accountable, responsible for those payments. And the good thing, I would say, the banks, they did repossess the property, right? So it's not like they didn't get the asset back and couldn't resell it, which now I look at the address of those four homes and they're now owned by someone else. And so the banks were still able to get that money, some of that money back on their investment. But it was a really difficult time for me because while I was going through it, I didn't know how it was going to end. Okay, so I focused on the student loans, I focused on the credit card debt, and I made a plan and I paid off all of that in 4 years, with some help of some federal student loan aid, right? So I was a teacher in a high need area, so we're going to talk about that if some of you are on the call right now and you may have loan debt. We're going to talk about how you can start to reduce and eliminate that. But I share this story with you because I know what it's like to feel like your back is against the wall. You don't know what to do, where to go, where to turn. And debt really does feel like a burden. I remember that heavy feeling that I had every single day because I didn't know where I was going to get this money, how I was going to get it. And, you know, it was a lesson that I learned through experience. I didn't go to school to get an MBA. But that experience really made me wonder. I'm like, gosh, I started doing this because I knew I wanted to be like Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad. I knew I wasn't going to get there on a teacher's salary. But I was like, if I had gotten better financial literacy education in school, maybe I would have made better choices, right? And that was really the inspiration for why Generation Wealth got started. Um, and I started, teaching my kids about how to, start businesses, even in the first grade, right? My master's thesis, the very first master's I did was on financial literacy in the elementary classroom. So I share this story with you because I know what it's like to, trying to get by on a teacher's budget. I know what it's like to be dealing with the burden of debt, but I also know what it's like to be on the other side, right? So today, of course, my story is very different. Completely debt free. I never went back into debt after that 2012, and I saw it was all gone. I kept myself out of debt. Here we are now, 13 years later, and continue to really be mindful about what I borrow and make sure there's a very clear plan for how to pay it back. I own and operate 3 successful businesses, and of course, my investments are in various asset classes that include stock, say crypto, gold, life insurance. And I would say my test became my testimony, and I'm really grateful to be able to live my purpose daily by helping people become financially empowered. And, to have your time where you can work wherever you want, whenever you want. For me, that was very important. And I think about, my values and using those values to decide and design the life that I want to live. I'm like, I want to be able to have flexibility in where I work and when. I'm the full-time caretaker for my mom, and she has several disabilities, so I have to be very present for her, and I'm an only child. And so that is also one of the reasons why it's important for me to have that time flexibility. So today, I don't like to say a former teacher because I still believe I'm a teacher. In another sense, I may not be in the same classroom every day, but I am visiting schools and working with students all across all grades, right, from kindergarten all the way to college. So I think I might be able to share some gems, and I want to hear from you too, right? So we're going to learn from each other this evening. So these are the questions that's going to guide our learning today. How does mindset influence how we manage money? How can we eliminate debt so that we can save and invest more for the future? What other financial goals should we be working on while getting out of debt? How do we budget for financial independence? And how can we make our money work hard for us? So let's jump right into it. We're going to watch a video, and then I'm going to just kind of take some of your responses in the chat to these 2 prompts. So describe how toxic thoughts appear in the brain versus healthy thoughts. And what are some things that we can do to change a toxic thought to a healthy thought in our brain? So we're going to watch a cartoon explainer video that's going to talk a little bit about what thoughts look like in the brain. And this is actually one of the videos that's part of the middle school and high school curriculum that we have in schools all over New York City. So we're in all 5 boroughs here in New York, and we're in over 100 schools, 10 districts. So as we go through this learning this evening, I'll be pulling some of those pieces because it's so relevant even to us as adults and how we manage and make decisions about money. Welcome to the Financial Independence video series brought to you by Generation Wealth. In this video, we are going to explore what thoughts look like in our brain. Did you know that our thoughts look like trees in our brain? Our brain has the power to change and grow new connections between neurons. This simply means that our brains have the ability to change. Scientists who study the brain named this process neuroplasticity. Neurons are the cells in our brain that communicate with each other to create thoughts, feelings, and actions. When we have healthy thoughts, the neurons in our brain form strong, healthy connections, just like a healthy tree with deep roots and strong branches. Healthy thoughts can make us feel happy, confident, and motivated. They can help us learn new things, make friends, and achieve our goals. But when we have toxic thoughts, the neurons in our brain form weak and unhealthy connections. Just like a toxic tree with shallow roots and weak branches. Toxic thoughts can make us feel sad, anxious, and scared. They can make us doubt ourselves, feel alone, and even give up on our dreams. The good news is that we can change our thoughts and grow healthy connections in our brain. We can replace toxic thoughts with healthy thoughts. We can do this by practicing mindfulness, meditation, positive self-talk, and healthy habits. When we grow healthy trees in our brain, we can improve our mental health, boost our confidence, and achieve our full potential. So remember, your thoughts can look like healthy or toxic trees in your brain, and you have the power to choose which ones to grow. Okay, so based on what you learned in the video, how would you describe the way toxic thoughts versus healthy thoughts, how do they appear in the brain? What do they look like? And then what are some things we can do to change a toxic thought to a healthy thought? And you can go ahead and drop your responses in the chat. Right. So we got, okay. Yeah, so toxic thoughts are like an unhealthy tree, while healthy thoughts are a flourishing tree. Oh, yeah, this is a really good response. And we can change toxic thoughts to healthy thoughts by practicing mindfulness, right? And positive self-talk. We oftentimes refer to those as affirmations. Yes, thank you so much for sharing. So this is actually scientific. This is something that I first discovered through the research of neuroscientist Dr. Carol Leaf. And under a microscope, our thoughts actually, if we have negative thoughts, they look like dying trees. The neurons, they look like trees, like branches. And so when these thoughts are negative, they look like they don't have any healthy connections, right? And then like positive, healthy thoughts, they look like flourishing trees. And this is not just thoughts about money. This is any area of our life, but we're talking about money today. And it's really important that we understand, I think, how our thinking can affect our life. And it's interesting to connect this to the science of our brain and to see that it actually has a physiological effect on our bodies, and that it manifests in our brain, and then it starts to manifest in other parts of our bodies too. The way we speak, sometimes how we feel, right? If you're not thinking right, you might start to not feel so good. So we've got to make sure that we're focused on developing the kinds of thoughts that are going to get us to the place that we want to be financially. So when it comes to mindset, there's a book called The Millionaire Mindset. It's by T. Harv Eker, and he talks about the various ways that our behaviors can affect how we manage our money and the things that influence that. So the behaviors that we have, the things that we do, the choices that we make with our finances, they're connected to our emotions. And oftentimes those emotions can be connected to something that we've experienced way in our past. So, sure, there are many strategies that we can use, right, to manage our money. We can use all of these cool tools and budget apps and all of that. But if we don't have a clear understanding of why we make the choices that we make and understand how we're going to course correct, doesn't matter what the tool is, you'll use it for a little while and then you'll stop. And so everything that I'm talking to you about today, I had to do this work. So I remember, when I was thinking about, well, what kind of behaviors, do I have with money? And I used to have money and I would spend it on clothes, right? I'll spend my money on clothes, I pay my bills, and then I'll spend the rest. Um, I didn't really save very much, and I didn't really do the work to think about where these behaviors came from until I read this book and I started to ask myself these really deep questions. And so, the three areas that can experience how you manage your finances and in a negative way is verbal programming, modeling, and specific incidents. So, I remember I grew up with my mom and my grandma. And I remember my grandma, she used to always complain about the lights being on because it would be, the light bill would be going up. This was a while ago when phones still had cords and you had to pay for the phone by the minute. And so I would be on the phone talking to my friends, and then she would come out her room and see me, and she would be so angry because that would be um, heavy. It'd be a lot for her to manage. She had to pay the rent, she paid the phone bill, the light bill. So, you know, very early I got this belief that money is something where you never have enough. There's never enough to take care of the things you need to take care of. Now, my mom, on the other hand, my mom, when she had money, she would go shopping, right? So we would go shopping, we would go out, we would eat. She would maybe see something she really likes, put it on layaway, and then we'll come and get it like a week later. And so I was like, oh, I guess, well, whatever is left over, you need to have fun, like, go shopping. So for me, money was for paying bills, and whatever's left over, you go shopping and have a good time. And that's exactly what I was doing, right? I was doing that, and I didn't realize it until I connected it to experiences that I had as a child. So I wanted to share that with you to model and just kind of help you start to think about, well, what did I notice when I was like younger? What did I hear, right? What did I see my family doing? What did I experience that maybe influences the way I behave with money now? So I just want you to sit with that. A really good book that you can reference to learn more about how to navigate this process is one, The Psychology of Money. It's a really good book, and The Millionaire Mindset by T. Harv Eker. So that's just about mindset. These are some things that you can do to start to really build on and develop the way we think about money. What we see in our mind is real. Thoughts are things. A mentor of mine, he says that to me all the time. Thoughts are things. And if you think about it, they really are. If you look at, any object, right, that might be near you, look at your cell phone. Your cell phone was a thought in someone's mind. I have an iPhone, so maybe not this version of the iPhone, but just think about, the very first iPhone that came out. That was a thought in Steve Jobs' mind. And then he was able to assemble the people and the materials in order to take this thought and to now bring it into this physical space where we can hold it and touch it and see it. So anything that you can see and perceive with your eyes, you also realize that that is something that started as a thought first. And so thoughts are very powerful. Thoughts are things, and we need to make sure that we're mindful about what we're thinking because it influences how we behave, okay? And the choices that we make with money. So reading books, if you don't have time, reading books can be time consuming. Um, Maybe if you commute and you drive back and forth, right? Or even if you take the train, you take public transportation, listening to books, listening to podcasts, listening to YouTube shows. Of course, you want to make sure that you're getting your information from good sources on how to improve your financial situation. This is going to help to change the way you think about money. Positive money declarations, creating a vision board of where you see yourself financially 5 years, 10 years from now, and keeping that in front of you as a reminder of where you're headed. Okay. And these are some small things, but let me tell you, like, there's nothing that I'm telling you tonight that I have not done on my own. I still have my vision board that I made actually 12 years ago, and almost everything on that vision board I've accomplished. Including, Generation Wealth was not a business 12 years ago, and now it is. But I have a picture of a child on the vision board, and it says, raise the next kidpreneur, right? So I was thinking about, how to help kids understand how to use money to start their own business or to become financially free. But it didn't exist in the natural 12 years ago, but now it does. So you think about what are the things that you can do to start moving in that direction. Scientifically, it's been proven that it takes not 21 days, but 66 days to tear down a toxic thought and replace it with a healthy thought. And how do you do that? You tear down toxic thoughts and build healthy thoughts by doing these things: reading books, listening to teachings, saying positive money declarations, creating a vision board, keeping the vision in front of you every day for 66 days. And physiologically, you are changing your brain. You're replacing a toxic thought with a healthy thought that looks like this flourishing tree. Okay, so now we're going to move on to debt. And I want you to think about, what's the largest debt that you need to pay off right now? What's something that you owe? I remember for me, the largest debt for me was that $1.3 million, and I had no idea where I was getting that money from. Debt can be a burden. I remember what I felt like waking up in the morning. Um, and it was a really rough time. So I know the feeling um, of having a lot of debt and maybe not really knowing when you'll ever be able to pay it off, right? So if there's a debt that you're dealing with right now, you want to drop it in the chat. Is it student loans? Is it credit cards? Is it a consolidation loan? What is it? Let's put it out here. For me, it was the real estate debt: mortgage, credit cards, and student loans. All right, we got them in the chat. Well, we're going to talk about it, okay? It's great that you're here because we're going to talk about how we can reduce and eliminate the debt, okay? So, let's look at the three most common strategies for debt elimination. So, we have do it yourself, a consolidation loan, and debt negotiation. I have done 1 and 3: do it yourself and debt negotiation. When you do it yourself, you pretty much, you take a look at your debt story and you figure out how you're going to approach this. For me, I remember reading a book that really gave me the strategy to do it myself, and I was actually able to do it and stay out of debt. A consolidation loan is when a bank pays the total amount of your debt, and then you repay the consolidation loan back to the bank with interest. And then debt negotiation is when a debt specialist speaks with the creditors to get the debt that you owe reduced by a fraction of its cost. I did debt negotiation very early in my 20s, and it was I didn't know better, right? So, it was a really bad it was bad for my credit report. For 7 years it showed up that I had went through debt negotiation. I wasn't necessarily in the position to buy a house or buy a car or make one of those big purchases where they're checking your credit, but my credit did take a hit for several years because of that. So let's see when it makes sense to do one over the other. So it doesn't matter whether you have negative cash flow, good credit, bad credit, or if you need to borrow money. Doing it yourself, you can do at any time, no matter what your situation is. When it comes to a consolidation loan, in order for you to qualify for a consolidation loan, you have to have at least average credit, okay? Maybe like 620 credit score to qualify for a consolidation loan. Um, the good thing about a consolidation loan is if you know you're going to need to borrow money within 7 years, maybe for a home, for a car, um, for any big purchase, then you will still be able to do that as long as you make the payments on the loan on time. When you go through negotiation, debt negotiation is really for those who have bad credit and they have negative cash flow. That's when it will make sense. Um, you forget about borrowing money. If you go through debt negotiation, you're not going to be able to borrow money within 7 years because you're going to have a derogatory mark on your credit report and it'll stay there for that long. So, my recommendation is to do it yourself. All right. There's lots of value in going through this experience yourself because you really get to see, like, well, how did I get here in the first place? And you learn from the experience. It can be hard, but you find yourself in a place where when you finally make that payment, that final payment, it's just such a wonderful feeling of relief. And you've learned some stuff through the journey. And that way you don't go back, or if you find yourself back in that place, you know exactly what to do. So, in doing it yourself, there are two strategies. There's the debt snowball strategy. This is the strategy that I use when I did it myself. And this is where you organize your bills from the smallest to the highest debt. You pay off the account with the smallest balance first while paying the minimum due on all the other debt. So once the smallest debt is paid off, you combine the amount you were paying from the smallest bill to the next debt in line, and then you follow the process until every bill is paid off. The next strategy is called the debt avalanche. And this is where you organize your bills from the highest to the lowest interest rate. You pay off the account with the highest interest rate first. So instead of the highest amount, we're looking at the interest rate with the debt avalanche. And while you pay off the one with the highest interest rate, you pay the minimum due on the other debt. And then once the debt with the highest interest rate is paid off, you combine that amount that you were paying from that bill to the next debt in line. And then you follow this process until every bill is paid off. They work very similarly. You have to decide what's going to work best for you. If you want to be able to kind of celebrate those small wins along the way, I would say the debt snowball, right? Because you're starting from the smallest bill to the highest. The debt avalanche, if you have a lot of high interest debt, then it may be more beneficial to pay off to do the debt avalanche because you're focusing on paying off the one with the highest interest rate first. Okay, so let's look at this case study. So we have here Taylor, and Taylor, she has a total of $42,341.42 in consumer debt. She's committed to getting out of debt so that she can start saving and investing towards financial independence. She has $2,000 saved for emergencies. Yay, Taylor. So she's a surprise is not going to catch her by surprise. She's at least prepared for an emergency. And she has picked up a second job so she can add an extra $500 towards her monthly minimum payments. She can use either the debt snowball or the debt avalanche method. So let's work together to help her organize her debt for each strategy. So here's a snapshot of Taylor's debt. Okay, she's got a JetBlue MasterCard, a Chase Sapphire Visa, an American Express card, and she's got that Sallie Mae student loan. How many of you guys have at least one of these cards in your wallet? I know we've got some student loans here. I know I got a JetBlue card because I travel a lot. But I pay my bill off every month. But we're going to help Taylor get there. We're going to help see how can Taylor use the debt snowball or the debt avalanche to eliminate her debt. So here's a snapshot of her debt. So what we want to do now is I want to ask you using the debt snowball strategy, right? So the debt snowball, we are looking for the debt with the smallest balance. We're going to focus, so Taylor's going to focus on paying that off first, and then she's going to pay the minimum on all the others. And then when she finishes paying the one with the smallest debt, she's going to go to the second smallest and then keep going until she gets to the highest. So how would you organize her payment plan based on this information? Which debt should she start with, which should be first, which should be second, which should be third, and which should be fourth using the debt snowball. Right, let's see how we're going to organize Taylor's debt using the debt snowball strategy. I know your wheels are turning. This is going to take a little time. So let's see, what do we have? All right, we've got some responses coming in here. Yes, so we've got the JetBlue MasterCard first, right? Because the balance on that card is $3,102.44. Then we've got another, okay, yes. So then we've got the MasterCard. We've got the American Express Blue, so the JetBlue MasterCard. Then we've got the American Express at $5,000, 5,000 and change. Then the Chase Sapphire Visa, and then the Sally Mae loan. So if she was using the debt snowball strategy, that's how she would organize her debt. Okay. Okay. So now let's see, how would the debt be organized if she were to use the debt avalanche strategy? Which one would be first? Because remember now with the avalanche, we're looking at interest rate. So the highest interest rate to the lowest. Okay. So the highest interest rate, yep, that Chase Sapphire Visa, 20.99%. Oh my goodness. Right? So that would be the first one that she would pay off. Then she would go to the MasterCard. Then she would do the American Express at 15%. And then finally the Sally Mae loan at 5.99%. Okay. So this is how she would organize how she's going to pay her debt. So this is a really important, even just going through this process, right, of looking at all the debt that you have and sitting and saying, okay, if I'm going to do either one of these strategies, let me sit down and organize how I'm going to a payoff strategy. And like I said, you choose which one you think is going to work best for you. But the most important thing is whenever you choose whatever strategy you choose, you want to be able to stick with it. Okay. All right. Now, for those of us who've got student loans, there are some things you can do if you have really the options are minimal if you have private loans. Okay, private loans, those are loans that are given through private lenders, banks, and such, private banks. And so there isn't much wiggle room for forgiveness. You may be able to, consolidate those loans into a loan that has a lower interest rate. But if you have federal loans, there are some forgiveness programs out there. So the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, I actually used that when I was a teacher. So I worked in a public school in a high needs area, and I was able to use this to significantly reduce my student loan debt. So this is something, if you think, okay, maybe after school, or if you're working right now and you are working in a high needs area, you may not have even known that this program exists, that you can actually apply for this, and that you'll be able to get your loan forgiven over time. So the repayment plan for your loan under the PSLF program, it is designed based on what your income is, right? So it's an income driven repayment plan. And then you make 120 payments, and then whatever is left after that, it's forgiven. So the program that I was in, I didn't actually have the balance forgiven. I had a certain amount forgiven every year. And then after, I think it was like 5 or 6 years, all of it could have been forgiven, but then I switched to a different area of education that did not qualify as a high need area. So about half of my student and I paid the other half. Then there's the teacher loan forgiveness for teachers in low income schools for 5 consecutive years. You are able to have up to $17,500 forgiven on any subsidized or unsubsidized loans. Okay. And then the Perkins loans cancellation, that's up to 100% cancellation for full-time teachers in eligible schools. So whoever said it doesn't pay to be a teacher, that's a lie because there's lots of programs available for specifically for teachers to help reduce and eventually eliminate your student loan debt. Okay. All right. So, what other financial goals should we be working on while getting out of debt? Well, you want to build up at least $3,000 of emergency funds, generate more money to pay down your debt faster. So, remember in that case study with Taylor, she took on a second job and used the extra money to pay down her debt because she wanted to accelerate how fast she can get rid of the debt. And then, of course, like we talked about, developing your wealth mindset. Now, you've got to be prepared for an emergency. In that example with Taylor, she had, I think it was like $2,000 put aside for an emergency. When you're getting out of debt, you can't really focus on building an emergency fund of 6 to 9 months. Okay, that's the recommended, having 6 to 9 months of emergency funds. But that's not the goal when you're getting out of debt. When you're getting out of debt, you want to have enough money to cover an emergency, a small emergency. Maybe, okay, you lost your job, that's where that 6 to 9 months. But in this case, you want to have, let's say you have an issue with your car, the transmission breaks down, you need a new refrigerator, or the boiler breaks in your house. You want to be able to pay as much of that emergency with the cash that you have on hand. Okay, so $3,000 in these times of inflation, it used to be 1,000, not anymore. We need at least I would say $2,000 to $3,000 put aside to help pay for any emergency that may comes up, because it's going to happen, right? It's this is life. It's not a matter of if an emergency is going to come up, is when. And when it does happen, we want to be prepared. Then the next thing, you want to generate more money to pay down debt faster and accelerate funding your investments. So create and sell an online course. You can sell themed student activities. You can create a subscription-based online community. Becoming a licensed notary, selling goods online, participating in the shared economy like Uber, Lyft, Grubhub. These are some ideas of how you can generate more money. If you wanted to take on a second job, you could do that. Remember, you have to be laser focused when you're focusing on getting out of debt. Because what happens is that debt takes away from what you could be putting aside to grow. And so we want to get out of this space where most of your money is going to pay this debt off, so that way you can free up now some of this money that you were paying towards your credit cards or your student loans, and now you're able to use that money to towards investments. Now, if you have a mortgage, right, your mortgage, owning a house in America, there are lots of tax benefits to that, right? But you also, it's probably your biggest expense, your mortgage. And I'm not sure, where many of you are, maybe if you're 10 years in or 15 years in, your mortgage is probably like the last big debt that you pay off. So I would say focus on your high interest debt, your credit cards, your student loans. Even, if you have federal loans, the interest may not be as high. If you have private student loans, those have higher interest rates. Eliminate those, and then you can invest and have a mortgage. But I wouldn't say to be actively investing while you have credit card debt and while you have student loan debt. All right, so I just wanted to highlight some of these ways that you can make money online. You may be familiar with Teachers Pay Teachers, where you can sell themed student activities and you can actually put it in the space where teachers are going and they're looking for resources and willing to pay a fee for resources that they may not have time to create. So this is a great space for you to look at to see, hey, maybe, I have this activity I've been using in my classroom for like 5 years. Let me see if I, put it on here, and it could be a resource to help another teacher who may not have time to create those kinds of resources. You can create and sell online courses and services. So Udemy and Fiverr are great platforms. You want to take whatever skills and resources that you have, and you want to put it on a platform where there's already customers. Okay. So you don't need to go and build your own website and offer your course on your own website when you can do it on Udemy. You don't have to, give out cards and post up stuff on, lamp posts that you're able to create graphics. You don't have to do that. You can post that. You can post your skills on Fiverr. I actually just hired somebody on Fiverr to create some videos for a new curriculum that I'm creating. He happens to be in Pakistan. He's done some work for me before. He did really great work, and so I've hired him again. I would have never been able to find him if it wasn't for this platform. So these are two resources I highly recommend if you have a skill that you can monetize, or if you have a course that you can offer. Check out these two platforms. You can create a subscription-based community. Now, I actually met a teacher about 3 weeks ago at a conference, a financial literacy conference. And I took a screenshot of his website because he just gathers resources from educators all over the country, and he has them on his website, and teachers that are interested, they pay a subscription to access to resources. I mean, he has like guest speakers and classes and all kinds of things. And he's a classroom teacher, but he's created another stream of income with his subscription-based online community. If you're looking for a platform to host your community, your online community, Mighty Networks is a really good network to use. You can anyone who is part of your community, they can access it on their desktop as well as their mobile phone. So this takes time to build. This is not going to generate money quickly to pay your credit card bills or your pay off any of your debt. It's going to take time to build. But once you are able to get that client base, it can be quite lucrative. Okay, so finally, the last thing as we're thinking about things you should be doing while getting out of debt is, of course, becoming back to the mindset, right? So we're reading, we're listening to books, you're applying these principles to your life. You develop a vision, right, of what you want your life to look like 1 year, 5 year, 10 years from now. Write it down, create a vision board. I saw my vision board, right? 14 years, 12 years ago. And there's still a few things that I'm working on. And then you follow through on SMART goals, right? SMART goals that'll help you attain your vision. Okay. I teach SMART goals to our middle school and high school students. And then we teach our high school students how to facilitate the learning with elementary school students. So they go into the elementary schools and they teach the little ones on how to create SMART goals and how to write them. So it's a really great skill, and you can apply it to your own life as well. Okay, so here's some suggested books that I think you should definitely read if you're not sure where to start. I've read all of these books and tried my best to apply the things that I've learned from each of them. Some of them I've read as paper copy, others I've listened to, but they're all great books. You definitely take a screenshot of this page. Tony Robbins, his book, Money Master the Game, excellent book. It's very long. It was actually really good to listen to, but then I ended up buying the book and making the notes of, where I wanted to apply what I've learned. So all great books here. Okay, so now let's think about if you look at your financial pipeline, where would you say the leaks are? Right? Where you have like, the money's coming in and you get the same amount of money probably every 2 weeks from your check, but where is it going? Like, is it Uber Eats? Is it subscriptions? Do you have kids and they just always seem to need something, or something comes up and it's like, I didn't plan for that, right? These unexpected expenses. So let's see. how we can start to budget for financial independence and budget in a way where we're prepared for the unexpected. So there are, I would say, two different ways. You have your normal traditional budget, right? Where you are looking at how much money you're making, you're setting aside money for your expenses, um, and for the things that you need. Maybe you save a little bit, um, but you do the same thing every month, right? You follow the same budget every month. Now, a financial independence budget is very specific in that it focuses on managing your monthly expenses with the goal of eventually generating enough passive income to cover and eventually exceed your monthly expenses. Okay, so if you decided, hey, you know what, maybe I don't want to teach full time, I want to teach part time, or maybe I love teaching, but once I retire, I don't just want to be dependent on my 401k or my 403b, right? Or my pension. I want to also have some income that's coming in every single month. And so that's what a financial independence budget does. It's very intentional about the money that you're saving and then how you're putting it to work for you um, while you're sleeping. So there's some factors that you need to take into consideration if you want to become financially independent. You want to eliminate debt, which we talked about. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the process of doing that. You've got to pay yourself first. If it's nothing else you remember from today's session, pay yourself first. Even if it's just $5, it's developing the habit and prioritizing yourself. You worked hard for your money. You have to pay yourself before you pay anybody else. Now remember, if you're eliminating debt, now we can start looking at building up a more sizable emergency fund to cover expenses. God forbid you lose your job for whatever reason. You have 6 to 9 months of living expenses saved up so that it can cover any emergency that arises. Of course, you want to protect yourself, right? So you want to have the right insurances in place, keeping your expenses low while generating more income, and then finally using your extra money to invest in passive income producing investments. So, step one, eliminate debt. This is really important. I mean, we're not going to spend too much time on the debt elimination because we spent quite a bit of time just talking about it, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned it because it's very important before, when you're budgeting, that before you can really execute a financial independence budget, you've got to, the first step of a financial independence budget is eliminating debt. Okay. Then pay yourself first, right? So we're going to just watch a quick video on what it means and why it's important. Welcome to the Financial Independence video series brought to you by Generation Wealth. The most important principle of saving is that you always PYF, which is an acronym for Pay Yourself First. Once you have saved enough money in your emergency fund, you should use your PYF savings to invest in passive income producing assets like index funds, real estate stocks, and e-businesses, just to name a few. When you do this, you put your savings to work for you so that you can make money even while you are sleeping. If you are consistent with this habit, your investments can grow to an amount where you'll make enough money with passive income that can pay your monthly living expenses. This is the first level of financial independence, and investing your PYF savings is one of the quickest ways to achieve this goal. Okay, so PYF, we probably gathered from the video, right? That PYF means to pay yourself first. And it's important because we want to make sure that we're prioritizing ourselves because we're the ones that's out there working for the money before we are paying all of our other that debts that we owe, your monthly expenses. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a whole lot of money at first. You just want to develop the habit, okay? Um moving along here a little faster through some slides than others, just because I want to make sure that I am honoring your time and that we are able to end at the time that I stated. So step 3, building up a 6 emergency fund. If you're not prepared for emergencies that will happen, then you're not ready to live a financially independent life, because one emergency can turn your life completely upside down. So now we're moving the $3,000 to cover a surprise to 6 to 9 months, so that anything that happens, you can sustain yourself for several months before, if you need to find another job, or another consistent source of income. Okay. This is going to be very important. This is a very important building block or foundation to becoming truly financially independent. Then protecting yourself. Okay, so want to make sure you've got your health insurance, disability insurance, life insurance. If you're a home, you got to have homeowners insurance. As a renter, renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is extremely inexpensive, but it's so important. A neighbor of mine a few years ago had a fire in her apartment, and she lost a lot, but she didn't have renter's insurance. But the person who lived under her, that ended up having the water damage from the fire department that came in with the hose, she did have renter's insurance, and so she was able to get much of her stuff replaced, at least in terms of getting the money to replace those things, because she had a renter's insurance policy. A will and healthcare proxy. You're working so hard. You want to make sure that, God forbid, something happens to you, you have someone in place who will be able to speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. And, God forbid, you pass on, that you're very clear about what's going to happen with the assets that you currently have. Okay. So as we're building wealth, we also want to be mindful about how we protect our wealth as well. And in step 5, so keeping your expenses low while generating more income. So these are some guiding questions that I want you to consider as you are thinking about, what does this mean for me? So how much money are you paying in subscription services? Do you need or use them all? Um, I don't know how much TV you watch. I don't know how many apps you use that have a subscription, but they add up, right? 3.99 here, 2.99 here, 5.99 there. And before you know it, you're paying $50 a month in subscriptions. You multiply that by 12. That's a lot of money, right? That's $300 a year. So I want you to really do an audit of your bills, and where are you paying for subscriptions that you don't need? Eliminate them, right? If you feel like you need them, maybe you might be able to negotiate a lower rate. How many of you have ever gone to cancel a subscription and then they're like, well, why are you canceling? If you say it's too much, then all of a sudden they're able to offer you the same subscription for half the price. Have you ever seen that? I know I've seen that happened with, I remember I had an Audible subscription, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not even using these credits. I'm not listening to the books fast enough, because I actually do read paper books too. So I went to end it, and they're like, okay, well, we can, pause your subscription for 3 months and you won't have to pay anything. And then I did that. And then the 3 months, I put it in my calendar and I went to cancel, and they said, okay, well, we can offer you a subscription for half the price. I'm like, okay, for half the price, I'll still get the credits. And then a few months later, I decided it doesn't matter what they're going to offer me. I'm going to end the subscription, because I just don't have the time to listen as fast as I'm getting the credits. So now, you know what I do? No more audible.com for me. There's a free app that I download on my phone called Libby, and I'm able to use my library card, connect it to the app, and then I can borrow Audible audiobooks from my library for free. So there are ways to save and eliminate some of those bills. Utility bills, those are bills that you can always negotiate to a lower amount. How often are you ordering food, takeout food? That adds up, right? So don't think about it, oh, it's just $30. If you're doing it 2-3 times a month, right? That's 30 times 3, right? 30 times 4. And then you take that amount and you multiply it by 12, and then you see the hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars that's leaking out of your financial pipeline, and it could be used towards investing. So, building wealth is not just about how much money you make, it's about how much you keep and how long you keep it for. So, when we're looking at our budget and you're doing an audit, there are three areas you want to look at: your fixed expenses, variable, and controlled. So your fixed expenses, these are obligations that are essential. This is your mortgage, your rent, their transportation, right? What you pay for gas, tolls, whatever, however it costs you to get to and from work and the places you need to go. These are non-negotiable costs. You pay the same amount every single month. Then you have variable expenses. These are obligations that could be a necessity or a non-essential, and they are due the same time every month, but they fluctuate based on cost and usage. So they could be negotiated to lower payments. All right. So think about your utility bills, your subscriptions, even some insurances, right? Your car insurance can be negotiated to a lower amount depending on what kind of coverage you want. Controlled expenses. So these are also expenses that could be a necessity or a non-essential, and you have full control over how much or how little you spend on these expenses. So clothes, hair care, nail care, entertainment, even food is a controlled expense. You can definitely pull back maybe on some of the brands. Maybe there's some store brands that you can sub. I have a friend, when you go to his house and his cupboard, everything in his cupboard is great value. He doesn't buy any name brand anything. He goes to Walmart and he gets the Walmart version. Everything. And his daughters always make fun of him. They're like, "Oh my gosh, dad, everything in your cupboard is great value." But you know what? He's keeping his money in his pocket and he's putting it into investing and saving because he's about to retire in 3 years. And so he knows that it's important for him to save money where he can. He still eats well, he's not starving, but he doesn't need to have Breyer's ice cream. Great value vanilla ice cream is just good for him. So when you are looking for areas where you're overspending in your budget, you want to look at your controlled expenses first, right? So are you doing your nails, once a week? Can you do it once a month? Can you maybe do your own nails? Are there ways that you can cut back on how much you're spending on food? Is there a cheaper grocery store you can go to? The second look would be your variable expenses. It's going to take a little more work. You might have to call your utility company and ask them, like, hey, I've been a customer with you guys for 15 years. I really want to look at a way to reduce, this bill that I have. I'm paying for internet and I'm paying for television. So is there a bundle? And oftentimes they'll be able to offer you, I've done this several times, offer you a lower cost for more services. The only thing is that you've got to be like a ninja with your calendar. They say, okay, we're going to give you this promotion for a year. You know what I do? I go to my calendar, I put it in my calendar as an alert so that when that time comes, I call them again and negotiate another deal. All right. It's harder for you to find any extra money in your fixed expenses unless you're like looking to sell your house and downsize to, a smaller living quarters, or if you're moving from, a 3 bedroom apartment to a 2 bedroom, or moving to a different city or a different state where the cost of living may be less. So those are big changes, lifestyle changes. And so fixed expenses, there's not a lot of wiggle room, but that doesn't mean that it can't be reduced. But just wanted you to think about where you should look first as you're thinking about how you might be overspending in your budget. All right. And then finally, the fun part, when you have that extra money, we're not going to use that extra money the way I used to in my 20s and, go to the store and buy nice clothes and nice shoes. We're going to take that money, we're going to invest it in income producing assets. So I'm really advocating for you to, beyond your 403B, beyond your retirement package, beyond your Roth IRA or traditional IRA, investing your money in these passive income producing investments that's going to pay you money every single month, whether you go to work or not. Okay. I'm not advocating that you don't get up and go take care of our babies because they need you. But we also want to make sure that we are smart and savvy with the money that we work so hard for. Okay. So, just a recap, the 6 steps: you want to eliminate debt, pay yourself first, build up a 6 to 9 month emergency fund, protect yourself, keep your expenses low, and generate more income. And then finally, use that extra money to invest in passive income producing investments. Okay, so now let's talk a bit about how you can make our money work hard for us. And this is, to me, the most fun part because once you start to see your money grow, you get excited and your attitude, I mean, it just snowballs, right? And you start to I feel like I attract opportunities to make money that I never even thought of before, but it's because over time I've become so much more aware, so much more intentional, even in my conversations with friends that they introduce me to other people who are, doing some really wonderful things in the world of investment. And I've seen not just, of course, my net worth grow, but also my mindset and my circle of friends. And so let's talk a bit about how we can make our money work hard for us, right? I love this picture of the money growing on trees. So I have a question for you. Which would you choose? Okay. One penny that doubles in value every day for 30 days, or so we got that penny, that shiny penny, or $1 million in cold hard cash. Which would you choose? Don't tell me why. I just want you to drop your choice in the chat. Which would you choose? The penny or the $1 million? Ooh, all right. We got some pennies here. All right. So let's see this video. Now I wasn't sure if I wanted to show this video, but I just love the lesson here. And I know for me, as a learner, stories stick. And I really wanted to leave you with this story today. So this is one of the last activities we're going to do together before we wrap up. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this choice. Okay. So the name of the story is The Choice, and it's an excerpt from a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. Okay. All right. Let's listen. And it's a little lengthy. It's about a almost 10 minutes. Okay. But it's worth it.
The Choice. A wealthy man, nearing the end of his days, summoned his twin sons to his bedside. Before he died, he told them he wanted to pass on to them the opportunity to experience the richness of life he had enjoyed for his many years on earth. "If I could do so, I would give you both the world," he told his boys. "But this is not possible, for even I do not own the entire world and everything in it. But there are 3 treasures I've had good fortune to experience in my life, and it is my fondest wish, my dying wish, that you would both have these 3 treasures. The first gift is easy to give and never runs out. I have been giving it to you both since you were born, and will die in peace knowing that you both already have it in abundance. The second gift is easy to give, but not always easy to have. For some, it never runs out, while for others, it constantly runs out. This gift I give you now, but whether or not you keep it will be up to you. The third gift is impossible to give, but can only be gained. I have been showing it to you both your entire lives, but cannot say whether or not you have gained it. This gift I cannot give you, but I can give you an opportunity to see it one last time before I die." The boys both wept to hear their father speak of his approaching death, but he smiled and bade them hush with a wave of his hand. "I see your grief, but in that grief you may be happy, for it is evidence of the first gift, which you have in abundance. Do you know what the first gift is?" The 2 boys dried their tears and furrowed their brows in deep thought. Easy to give, but it never runs out. Suddenly, the first boy clapped his hands and said, "Love! The first gift is love." The father smiled. The boy was right. "And the second gift?" he asked them. They again became quiet with thought. Easy to give, but not always easy to have. The second boy looked up with a start. Money! Is the second gift money? It was indeed. For some, it never runs out, while for others, it constantly runs out. And the third? Impossible to give, can only be gained. This time, both boys remained buried in thought. Neither could come up with an answer. The father smiled again, a little sadly this time. He lifted a beautiful lacquer box from the bedside table onto his lap, opened it, and looked inside. I offer you both a choice. He beckoned the boys to move closer. 1 month from today, you both will turn 21. I will no longer be with you, for my life has run its course. On that day, 31 days from now, I will be well on my way to the next world, and the two of you will set off to make your way in this one. Yet I do not wish to set foot on this journey empty-handed. My last gift to you on the day of your departure will be a purse to finance your adventures. What goes into each purse is your choice. He reached both hands inside the box and then held them out to the boys. If you take the penny, you may also take it with you or leave it in your purse. However, if you choose the penny, my Treasury Director has instructions to double the contents of your purse every day. He took out another lacquer box, identical to the first, opened it, and took out another stack of $1,000 bills and another penny. Here is 1 million. Here is 1 penny. Each of you have the same choice to make. Whatever you do not take, I will return to my treasury to add to my estate. Now, go, rest, and think. Tomorrow morning, come back and tell me your choice. All night, the first boy lay in bed thinking, what should I do? Which should I take? What is the lesson? The second boy lay awake too, but he asked himself different questions. He had made his decision before his father had finished the sentence. Now he was making careful plans for what to do for the next 31 days. When morning came, the second boy sprang into action. After securing the million in cash from his father, he hired a sharp consultant and a manager to help him execute his carefully wrought plan. They rented out a hotel suite in which they conducted exhaustive back-to-back interviews for the next 6 days. By week's end, they had hired a staff of the finest financial advisors in the land. The boys' new crackerjack money man team spent the second week in intensive round-the-clock brainstorming sessions, drafting proposal after proposal, seeking the smartest, most cost-effective investment and leveraging strategies, both long-term and short-term, to help the wealthy man's son turn his million into a genuine fortune. By week 3, the best plans had been selected, winnowed, examined, combed, explored, game-theoried, road-tested, computer-simulated, and dissected. With all their I's dotted and their T's crossed, the boys' advisors were locked and loaded and ready to rumble. Off they went into the battlefields of commerce and speculation. The boy spent the next few days keeping in close contact with his far-flung financial team by telephone. But by midweek, it seemed clear that things were well in hand and he was not needed. He decided to pay a visit to his brother, whom he had not seen since breakfast on the morning after that long and sleepless night. When he arrived at their home, he was shocked to hear his brother's account of the past few weeks. After that excited breakfast, the first boy had also paid a visit to his father. But without explaining why, he announced that he had made the second choice. He had taken the penny, left it in the purse, then returned to his room and began reading from one of his favorite books. The second day, he visited again and was allowed to peek into the purse. The shiny new penny had been joined by a companion. On the third day, he found 4 pennies. On the fourth, there were 8. And on the fifth, 16. Then 32. By the end of the week, just as his brother's ace financial team was assembling in the beautiful hotel suite for the first time, he had amassed a nest egg of 64 cents. By the end of week 2, with nearly half the month gone, his piles of pennies had swelled to just shy of $90. $81.92 to be exact. Now, a few days into the third week, the purse's contents had grown a bit more. He now had a sum of $655.36, he proudly pointed out, easily enough to sustain him on the road for a full week. "But you poor sap," his brother cried on hearing his story. "I can't believe you went for the penny. It's not too late. Visit our father. See if he will relent and give you your own million. Or if he insists in prorating the amount, then even just half the million. It's better than scrabbling by on a few paltry hundred. And if he refuses, you've got me to help. I can't stand the idea of you venturing out into the world with scarcely enough to feed yourself for a week." But the brother seemed unperturbed and wouldn't hear of it. Toward the end of week 4, the second boy's top advisors brought him some worrisome news. The markets, it seemed, had gone a bit soft, taken a bit of a tumble, actually. The team had acted quickly and salvaged what they could, but their earlier rosy projections would most certainly need to be revised downward. The boy thanked them for their vigilance and waited, fretting and anxious. At the close of the week, the team brought mixed news. Some investments had performed quite well, others had suffered. All in all, the boy had made a modest gain. Starting with his $1 million in cash, his team had succeeded in parlaying that into nearly $1.5 million. Unfortunately, his expenses, including their commissions, tax, bills for the hotel suite, broker fees, and the rest, came to just over $500,000. The boy had ended the month with just a bit less than he started. In a panic, he rushed to see his brother, to see how he had fared with his $655.36, only to receive yet another shock. On day 28, his brother's purse of pennies had passed the $1 million mark. On day 29, the $2.5 million mark. Yesterday, on day 30, it doubled to more than $5 million. The boy who chose the penny had discovered the extraordinary power that some have called the eighth wonder of the world, the remarkable creative force of compound interest. And today, the boy who chose the penny was worth more than $10 million. This son gained the third gift. The first gift, easy to give and which never runs out, is love. The second gift, easy to give but not always easy to have, which never runs out for some and is always running out for others, is money. The third gift, which cannot be given but can only be gained, is wisdom.
All right. I don't know about you, but I love, love, love that story. It's a reminder of the magic of patience, right? And waiting, and wisdom. You know, wisdom is the key to lasting wealth. And it's the ability, we look at the definition, to think and act on the knowledge, experience, and um, insight that we have. So it's one thing to have the knowledge, but when you act on it, that's true wisdom. And if you all, those of you who chose the penny, you definitely made the wise choice. Although that brother had to wait 30 days, I'd say 30 days is nothing if it meant that at the end you'd have over $10 million, right? So when we think about wealth, it's not just money, but it's resources, it's material possessions. I think even the quality of relationships that you have with your family and friends add to a wealthy life. And you got to think about how you can move wisely in these areas with the assets and the things that you hold that are of value to you, right? So how do you steward your relationships with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, and keep them intact? How do you manage the things that you value, right? Whether it's your home, your money, your investments. I always, there's a saying that I use with my friends, and they always say, "Oh, here you go again. How you do anything is how you do everything." And so, even if it's the smallest act, if you do it with pride, you do it with care, you do it with thought, you do it with love. Uh, it's a habit that you're building and how you do things, and then it permeates into everything that you do. So just I just wanted to really talk a bit about that before we go into our last piece and wrap up for today. So, I want to just bring to your attention. I've talked a lot today about investing in income producing assets beyond your retirement savings. And the strategy that I use is one that's called income investing. And I invest in assets that I know are going to provide me with an income for years to come. So it's a strategy focused on building a steady stream of cash flow from investments rather than relying only on growth in value. So income investments include dividend paying stocks, real estate investment trusts, actual traditional real estate, bonds, high interest savings, and CDs. That's the most conservative. I usually put my money there when I'm saving it for a bigger investment, usually real estate. If you're not familiar with real estate investment trusts, it's a low cost way to enter into real estate investing without having to be a landlord, dealing with, property managers or anything like that. You can actually invest in commercial properties like hospitals, data storage centers, hotels, billboards, through stocks on the stock exchange that are known as REITs, real estate investment trusts. And these are companies that hold these commercial types of properties, and they pay out 95% of their income to their shareholders every single month. So you can invest in real estate for as little as $50 in the stock market, and you are able to, every real estate investment trust, they pay dividends because the whole point is to be able to collect a monthly income from your holdings. So real estate, of course, that's one of the oldest ways to collect passive income. Bonds, a lot more conservative, but you do have bonds, you hold them for a while and then you're able to collect money from that. And then high yield savings accounts and CDs. So we do a lot of work with teachers and with families and also with students on step by step on how to actually start investing in these various types of assets. But the very first thing you got to do, you got to open a brokerage account. So if that's the one thing you do today, you go ahead, you open a brokerage account. It doesn't matter who. These are some very well-known brokerage firms: E-Trade, Charles Schwab, Fidelity. You make a list of the products that you enjoy using in your daily life that you'd be interested to invest in, right? Do you drink Coca-Cola? Do you stop by McDonald's for coffee in the morning or Starbucks? What kind of technology do you use? Do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android? Make a list of those products. And that will be where you start, because most of these products we use every day, they're actually Fortune 500 companies. These are companies that are, in the S&P 500. And so that's where you start your research, but that's not where it ends. And then you start to use the stock app on your phone to do a watch list. Now, if you want to learn more about this process, we actually teach this to our kids through our curriculum, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit. If you met me at a conference, most likely I gave you one of the student handbooks. And so we teach kids all like 8 steps to start investing in the stock market. And so we outline that for them, and they go on, they open their brokerage accounts, they're researching stocks, they're buying stocks, holding them, investing in them for the long term. So if you liked today's session and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I love this, I would love to have a session like this at my school, and we come out and we do work with teachers. So we do professional development for teachers. I call this kind of like the cross between professional and personal development, right? So it'll happen during your professional time, but it helps you develop as a person so that you can be a more effective teacher. Imagine not having to worry about finances, understanding how to manage finances better. And so we do these kinds of sessions, workshops with teachers at schools, and we also do it on district level as well. So the professional learning experience for teachers, some of the things you walk away with is strategies on how to develop your mindset, how to turn your intellect into income through side gigs, how to research stocks. So today I just shared like the tip of the iceberg, right? But we're going to actually get into it. So I'm going to show you, how do you research these stocks? How do you find these real estate investment trusts to start generating reliable passive income streams? And then you get lots of resources and tools to support your debt elimination and wealth building journey. If I met you at a conference and you got one of our student handbooks, we actually have one for adults. And so that's the picture of the one there on the right. And so usually when schools sign up to have this workshop for their teachers, it includes the book for each teacher. And so it has everything that's in the student handbook and some. So if this is a series that you're like, I want you to come to my school, definitely tell your principal, your administrator, your superintendent about today's session, and they can share my information, and they can set up a call so that we can figure out how we can bring all of this financial literacy goodness to your school for the teachers. I Teachers changed my life. I love them. I do this session once a month as a way to pay it forward for teachers, because you all shape our future. You're always working with our babies and helping them become better people, because they're the ones that's going to be taking care of me when I'm an old woman. And so I value and love teachers, and it's really an honor for me to do this session once a month for you all. But if you love what you heard and what you learned today, please share it with your school so that we can come in and we can do this on a larger scale. We also have a curriculum for students. You have a middle school and a high school curriculum. And that curriculum is digital, it's accessible all the time. And then we have, of course, our student handbooks that go with that. It's being used right now in New York City in over 100 schools across all 5 boroughs. And so it's definitely a great resource. I mean, the kids, the testimonials, we have, so many wonderful young people that have gone through our program, and they've made some amazing strides in their financial future because of what they've experienced with generational wealth. So I'm going to show this last video, and then that'll be it for this evening. At Generation Wealth, we believe in empowering the leaders of tomorrow by providing essential financial education right where it matters the most. In schools, our school-based services include on-site and virtual learning for teachers, parents, and students. Our comprehensive programs are designed to equip learners with the knowledge and skills they need to navigate the world of finances confidently. Generation Wealth offers standards-aligned digital curricula that can be accessed from any desktop or mobile device. Our financial independence curricula are tailored to suit different age groups, ensuring that students receive age-appropriate lessons on manifesting, making, managing, and multiplying their money. And that's not all. Complementing our school-based services is the Generation Wealth Financial Independence Handbook. This invaluable resource is the perfect guide for students. It provides an interactive learning experience with videos and authentic opportunities for students to apply their learning. This handbook can be paired with the digital curriculum in schools, or students can use it on their own at home. From setting financial goals to understanding credit scores, this handbook is a roadmap to financial success. It's not just a book, it's a tool that empowers students to take control of their financial futures. Generation Wealth, building a foundation for a lifetime of financial success. Visit our website at generationwealth.org to learn more about how to bring our school-based services to your school or district. Because when it comes to financial education, we're not just teaching, we're transforming lives. All right, So you can go to this link here to book a call. I'm actually going to put it in the chat so that you have it. If you'd like to book a call, 30-minute one-on-one with me to talk about how we can bring these resources to your students and to the teachers at your school. This is some of my information where we can stay connected. I'm on Instagram, generation.wealth. You can also follow my personal page, JRock's World, and then I'm also on LinkedIn. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm just gonna, that link to book a call, I'm just gonna drop it in the chat. So if you're interested in booking a call to talk more about what this could look like at your school, I want to make sure that you can do that. And that's it for this evening. I want to thank all of you for joining this evening. I hope that you had a wonderful learning experience and you walked away with something today that you did not know before. And let's see where our paths, cross again. And hopefully I'll be able to meet you in person at your school. Have a wonderful evening and thank you so much for joining our webinar. Thank you.